Hi, everyone. My name is Adriana, and I lead our in-person and virtual events program here at HammerTech. I'd like to thank you all so much for joining us here today at our live event, Proactive High-Risk Management for Contractors, Leveraging PSIF and Sticky. Just some quick housekeeping. If for any reason you are having technical difficulties, just please let us know, and we'll try to assist you the best way that we can. This webinar will run for about 45 minutes with a Q&A portion at the end. So hold on to your questions, or you can drop them in the chat and we will try to answer them all at the end. We are also doing some pop-up questions throughout the webinar to keep you guys engaged. Don't worry if you get an answer wrong. We won't hold it against you, but they're just for fun. So keep an eye out for those. And as promised, for attending the webinar, we will be sending you and your team a pack of energy coins in honor of our topic today. So please keep an eye out for an email from me after the webinar, and it'll give you instructions on how to get those sent over to you. So without further ado, let's just get stuck into things. Dylan, if you wanted to kick us off.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Adriana. So my name's Dylan Hipple, and we'll get into introductions here in a minute, but really just want to introduce the topic to start out here, which is, how we can leverage sticky, PSIF, HRA, these different high-risk types of activities to really dive deeper into safety and create that proactive safety program. So Reese and I are going to kind of be talking through how we leverage these tools in the field, how you incorporate them into your safety program, and what you do with them in the end. So really our agenda is pretty simple today. We're going to run through what is sticky PSIF for those of you who've never heard of it. Why are we shifting towards this in the industry? What are some benefits of implementing a program like this? How do we incorporate it into a safety program? And then what do we do with the data? So those are our main points. Again, it's myself and Reese. Reese, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself first.
Good morning, everybody. Like Dylan said, Reese Fortin here. I am an HSE manager for Sunt Construction, and it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Reese. My name's Dylan Hipple. I'm with HammerTech. I'm a senior customer success manager with HammerTech. Been here a couple years previously, safety professional for the past 10 years, worked in construction, consulting, insurance, a little bit of everything. So a lot of what I do now is working with customers at HammerTech, helping them incorporate this type of stuff into their programs. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and kick it off on what is sticky, what is PSIF, and how do we focus on this? So Reese, I think you being one of the founding mothers of Sticky, I'll let you kind of talk about what Sticky is.
Well, first of all, Sticky literally stands for the shit that can kill you. And that was formulated by the corporate safety team at Sunt Construction in a room, and we hashed it out over a couple of days and came up with that official acronym. We've actually trademarked it, which is pretty fun. The federal government thought it was so unique and interesting that they granted that for us. So it's pretty cool. It's been a journey, and it's really, really something interesting to talk about today.
Awesome. Yeah. And some of the other terms up there, PSIF, HRA. PSIF is, and you may have heard of SIF, which is very similar. It's potential for serious incident fatality or serious incident fatality. HRA, high risk activity. Really, these things all boil down to the same concept. It's taking our focus and putting it on the things that have the most high risk potential on our job sites. So really we want to talk about different ways to incorporate these types of programs into your safety program so we can start focusing on the things that are really getting our people hurt the most. Now, as far as like shifting the focus goes, why are we talking about this? So why did Sunt have to come up with Sticky? Why is PSIF gaining more traction? Why is everybody looking at HR? Why is everybody joining this webinar? So that's what we really want to talk about. What does the industry shift look like? For starters, I think, as practicing safety professionals, a lot of us, if you came up through, you may have learned Heinrich's triangle. Heinrich's triangle was he's like the father of safety that said, for every 300 near misses you have, there's 29 minor incidents and 1 major incident. And what we're starting to find is that that's not really true. When you look at those 300 near misses, a good portion of those were PSIF. They had the potential for serious incident fatality. They could be marked as sticky. So we really need to start to shift our focus to look at those things individually, separate of that. It's not 300 near misses equal one major incident. That math doesn't add up anymore. There's also some really good information on like stats of incidents and injuries. And Reese, I'll let you talk to that of some of the different ways that you're seeing or what trends you're seeing in the industry.
Yeah, we've found it really important that we shift towards looking at sticky. It is a proactive approach, but what really is driving us is the fact that in our construction industry in the United States, fatalities have increased, and that's not acceptable. As an industry, we need to do something about it, and so Sun is pretty much taking the lead to do something about it with our program to stop the sticky.
Yeah, and I encourage any of you to go look up the information. You can look it up at BLS. It's incidents are down, but fatalities are up. And at the end of the day, we're focused on making sure our workers go home safely. We're not getting anybody killed, and we're not getting anybody seriously injured. This is a way that we can start to focus on that. We're looking for different results, right? We've come a long way with safety in the last 15, 20 years from where it was to where it is today. And we are seeing that reduction in incidents, but now the focus is on the reduction of incidents for the stuff that's getting people really hurt. And Reese, earlier we were talking, and a point you made that I think that makes a lot of sense to bring up here is one of the reasons that Sun started Sticky is the language, being able to speak to the trades. You want to just kind of talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. That's another good reason why we thought we should shift towards this approach with our safety program is it really speaks the language of the crafts workers out there, the people, the men and women that are building our projects every day. It speaks their language and it gets their attention. I can go up to any worker on any one of my job sites and I can ask them, hey, what does sticky mean? And they can tell me what it means.
Yeah.
But further, they can actually tell me what they're doing today that is sticky, and even further, what they're doing to control that sticky energy. It's awesome, and it really speaks their language. They have bought into it, and they get it. They like it.
That's awesome. And I think like for me, that's like one of the main differences between sticky, PSIF, HRA. PSIF and HRA, that's terminology used by safety professionals, whereas the sticky, like you just mentioned, really resonates with the trade. People hear it for the first time, like, oh, I really like that. I don't know how many people I've introduced this topic to where they're like, that makes sense, and they run with their version of it.
Yep, totally. Yep. I was just actually talking to a handful of OSHA compliance officers yesterday in El Paso, and they were even talking about sticky now and
Nice.
and how it's having an effect on the industry using that approach. And I thought that was pretty funny. They're even digging it.
Awesome. Yeah, and like it's clear like why we're shifting. So as we're shifting, we want to talk about some of the benefits that we're going to see as we start to implement these types of programs. So right off the bat, I think three main pillars that I'm looking at: reduction in serious incidents, fatalities. We've already talked about that. It also increases the planning process on projects. I know projects where I've implemented sticky PSIF type of programs, the planning and collaboration between operations and safety is definitely benefited. And then third pillar for me is resource allocation. We don't have infinite number of safety professionals available or superintendents that can be on every job. So what we need to do is we can focus our efforts on the projects that have sticky activities in it, and being able to identify those activities up front helps us really put our resources in the right spots. Reese, anything to add here? Any other benefits that you can see from implementing a program like this, or anything that SUNT has specifically seen as a benefit of after implementing this?
Yeah, absolutely. Want to give you a couple examples, especially along the lines of enhanced planning and collaboration. What we're doing at the moment is we are using our scheduling software, which is Primavera P6, and safety professionals are working with schedulers and superintendents to plug in on our schedules, on the Gantt charts and everything, where we have sticky activity. So a big crane pick that's coming up. We're working together right now. We're collaborating on putting those in the schedule. So when they, come up with, 6 weeks look ahead, a little flag will say, hey, make sure we're getting PIC plans and looking at these things. So that's one really neat example. But I also wanted to share what we're doing along the lines of resource allocation. When we start a new project, we have a project safety plan, just like any contractor does. You've got to have this document that talks about how you're going to manage safety on the project. But in that document, we have made sure we've outlined sticky activities and controls. And what we're doing is looking at these far ahead in advance, maybe a year or more before we even go build the project. And we're able to allocate resources like money for, say, a buck hoist instead of having personnel carry stuff upstairs, or we're able to put more money in for maybe prefabricating things off site. So it's really awesome what we're doing with allocating things in advance and planning ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, I've talked to numerous people who haven't quite put it together like you guys have, like the scheduling with P6. I know that's a pretty common scheduling software in the industry. Being able to identify those activities up front, I think, is just probably a game changer for you guys. I've personally been able to witness something like that, but I can imagine it really helps you to hit all of these things: the enhanced planning, the resource allocation, and overall reduction in serious incidents. So really cool that you guys are able to do that.
Nicely said.
Awesome. So we talk about the benefits, but how do we actually integrate sticky into our programs? So with that being said, jump to the next slide. I think there's numerous places that we can incorporate sticky PSIF into our current safety programs. I'll speak from some personal experience, and I'm sure Reese will as well, but you can really plug this in in various parts of the process. Pre-construction risk assessment. Personally, we started doing pre-construction risk assessments with all of our contractors. And one of the areas we would do, or one of the things we would do, is identify all their sticky activities up front. So we'd have enhanced planning. So that's one part of the process that you can identify sticky, is you can have a part, some type of pre-construction risk assessment where you identify them up front. The daily planning. So you're doing pre-task planning activities daily, probably. You should be. And when you're doing those daily activities, we can start to identify sticky activities there. Incident investigation, I think that's somewhere everybody sees this going. It's after the fact. We can definitely start to identify what had the potential to be serious, what was a sticky activity. And then and the last one there, inspections and observations. So I've worked with a lot of customers at this point where we have actually started to put a sticky observation into their normal safety observation. So as I'm raising an observation, I can identify whether or not it is sticky. And then if it is sticky, I can have some enhanced questions beyond that. And what that allows us to do is we can really segregate that data and be able to, make some changes based on that. But really, there's all kinds of different places that you can incorporate this into your programs. Reese and I were talking just before this, and she was mentioning SUNT's sticky walk process. So Reese, I think that'd probably be a really good place to start if you just want to talk through what that sticky walk process looks like for SUNT.
Yep, it's something we've done to really integrate sticky into our daily operations to bring it home. So what we have is an expectation and a requirement. People are held accountable to this, actually, and their bonuses are impacted by it. It's a weekly expectation for each one of our operations employees to go out and do at least one sticky walk. And what that means is they use our safety app. It's got our Fatality broken up in different categories. So for example, shit that's built at heights, that could be a sticky walk that I'm going to go do, and I'm going to go watch these iron workers erect a steel building. So I'm going to go do the sticky walk. And it's control based. So it asks just a few questions. And if the answer to all those questions is yes, then that means we're controlling sticky and no one's going to get seriously hurt or killed in that activity. Also, it dives further when we do answer no, and maybe there is a control that's missing. It guides us into what's basically a mini causal analysis on the spot. So how did we get to the how did we get so far here
Mhm.
to the point where someone is now exposed to this sticky energy? Maybe this iron worker isn't tied off properly, and if they did slip and fall, they're going to their doom, right? So we're guided through within our little sticky walk app, causal analysis on the spot of how did we get to this point? You know, was the hazard recognized? Did they have the controls? Did they know what they should have had in place? Did they have the equipment they should have? You know, why didn't they? So it's a really great tool that we're using, and I feel so strongly about its effectiveness in stopping the sticky. It's such a great tool doing these sticky walks.
Yeah, I think too many times we think about cause analysis, post accident. I mean, that off the bat, that's where my head went. We have an incident, we do some type of root cause analysis. But the fact that you guys are being so proactive in using sticky to identify the things that need to be looked into further, I think that's a really big game changer for you guys.
Yep.
Awesome. So part of all of this is being able to collect data and stuff on this. Like I mentioned, we're able to segregate the data. We can start to see like what our sticky activities are, what our high risk things are. I know working in consulting and then also working here at HammerTech, I run stats and reports a lot to try to help customers trend their data. And what I'm typically seeing is, the top three are PP, housekeeping, electrical cords, right? Those are the things that everybody sees as their top three. By implementing something like Reese has implemented, the sticky walk process, we can start to shift our focus away from that. So yes, it's still important. Yes, it's part of the safety culture on a project to look at those things, but it shouldn't be our main focus. And so what we've started to do is push these sticky specific inspections. So very similar to Reese's sticky walk process, it's what are the things on our project that are most critical or have the most high risk potential, and then creating inspections and observations based on those things, and then using those as the KPIs. And we're really just starting to implement this with some customers, but as we're seeing a shift in the PPE, the housekeeping, the electrical cord type of observations. And we're starting to see categories more aligned with fall protection, electrical, excavation, confined space, things you would typically associate with more high risk stuff. So I think all of that being said, it's really important that we look at everything, but we focus on the sticky. Awesome. So again, a big part of this is data and analytics. So just want to kind of briefly touch on that. So how do we utilize the data? How do we actually, move forward with this? I think my biggest thing here is making sure you have a plan to collect the data, whether you're using a software like HammerTech, you're using a sticky app that you've built, or you're using some other software or, pen and paper process, being able to have a media to collect the information and then creating action and strategies based off of that. Reese, do you want to talk about some ways that SUNT uses data and analytics, or maybe what's important to you guys when you're breaking this down?
Yeah, we have built a bunch of. Fortunately, we have a data engineer, I'll call him, on staff that we hired, and it's a nice perk of working for a great company that invests in safety and other technologies. And we've got a pretty robust dashboard system that lives in Microsoft Power BI, and all of our data that we put in our sticky walks, our incidents, other various forms, it gets dashboarded, and we're able to look at the data and educate ourselves on where we should be focusing our time and energy. What training things we should be working on. Maybe we have an issue with people tying off incorrectly, and we need to do some more training on that, for example. But the data is pretty interesting. The latest interesting thing we're up to right now with it is, I mentioned how we're doing those causal analysis on the spot. Essentially,
Right.
we're dashboarding that, so I can look and see why we are exposing people to sticky. I could actually tell you that, whatever that reason is. And it seems like when I recall looking at the data last, it was seems like we had a problem with executing, to be completely transparent. We know what the hazard is. We know we know we're going to be exposed to a fall. We know we're going to need a tie off, and we're going to need this certain harness and lanyard, for example. And we just don't tie off. We just don't clip off. So that seems to be what the problem is. The execution right there is the final piece. And so it's interesting to be armed with that knowledge so that we can we can do something about it, the behavior, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And not to put you on the spot, but how are you guys categorizing those types of things? Like execution is a category, I would say. How did you come up with the categories that you've created for your cause analysis?
Heartburn,
Yeah.
room of safety people kind of just hashing it out. Like, why do people get exposed to sticky? Like, why? We're sitting there like, why does it come to this? And we're like, well, you know, it's just maybe because they didn't know there was that exposure. They just didn't even see it. Or if they
Right.
did, they didn't care, or they well, yeah, that's basically what we say. They didn't care
Right. Yeah.
almost. And it's just being real and think about why people end up in the situations they end up. That's how we came up with those categories. But yeah, more to come on that, I think, in the next year after we keep running the data for a while.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I think talking with people, that's a big struggle for a lot when they start building their program is like, how do we categorize these things? Like if you use a system like us, are you putting a drop down or do you have a free text field? You know, when you use a free text where anybody can type, it's you're getting data all over the place. So I always like to preach, be intentional with your data, try to categorize it like you guys have done. And you know, a lot of times you have to learn from heartburn, like you mentioned. So
Yeah, but this is a little plug for Hammer Tech though. I've gone through numerous demos and I've seen the platform, and I have friends that at different companies that use it. And the way that the dashboarding is integrated, I think is such a cool feature to be able to not have to rely on having that engineer and directing them on how you want to build out all this data, but the fact that you have it built in it on your platform at HammerTech is pretty neat, and I think that saves a lot of heartburn. And I would recommend people to at least consider it for that reason alone, how the dashboarding is integrated for that, you know, on the data side.
awesome. Appreciate the plug. I like it too. That's why I left the industry to come work for Hammer Tech.
There
I
you go.
saw the vision.
Yeah.
And like to that point, like when you any software really, but when you have a software that houses your whole safety program in one, it helps the data connect. So we're able to see the pre-task planning. So like you guys are using your scheduling, so we can see what activities in scheduling typically are associated with sticky. So we can start there, and we can look at past incidents. We can look at historical data. We can use observations. We can use all that information to say, okay, when we do this type of work, it typically leads to sticky of some sort. So it's really cool that you can do it there. You can do it in your daily planning. So, as you have different trades on site, different work activities on site, you can start to be a little more predictive with what type of activities are going to be sticky. You have steel erection on site. It just inherently is a more sticky activity than another, maybe a civil contractor, where they have their different types of sticky with, moving equipment, things like that. Steel erection is constantly exposed to work at heights, crushed hazards, caught in between, that kind of stuff. So I think my main point here is just getting really intentional with your data and understanding how to collect it and then actually utilizing it once you collect it. Cool. And the last point I want to make is just that, working with a lot of different contractors and a lot of different industries, what we're starting to see is the majority of observations and inspections that are being completed are non-sticky. It's 90 some percent that we would consider, low risk, but realizing how big of an impact that 5 to 10% has, where we want to actually take a much deeper dive into that, where I think what you guys have done at Sunt, having the cause analysis with right in the observation, makes a ton of sense, because the 90% matter, but not as much as the 10%. And we want to really dive deeper into that. So just wanted to kind of leave on that point.
Yep. Nice.
Awesome. Anything else sticky related that we might have missed, Reese? I know you probably talk about this all the time, more than me. So I just want to make sure, give you a chance to give your final thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And I'm sure many people listening to the call right now are like, where the heck do I start? So
Right.
we actually have a web page. If you just go on Google and go type in Sunt Sticky, it should come up in the top couple listings. It's you can learn more about Sticky from us. You're welcome to come join us in the office in Tempe, Arizona. That's Phoenix, if you didn't know, and learn about it. And we'd love to share more. There's just so much. It's overwhelming. Like, where do we start with this whole sticky thing? So we'd love to help out anybody that's interested. And
Awesome.
good luck in your journey, your sticky journey, everyone.
The best safety is always plagiarized. So, just it's not reinventing the wheel. It's taking what others have already figured out. So you guys have a good bit of it figured out. So learn
That's
from
right.
them.
That's right. There's no trade secrets in safety is what I like to say.
Yeah, I like that better. Yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right. We'll open it up for Q&A for the group here. Feel free to drop questions in the chat, and then we can kind of talk through it.
And by the way, those quiz questions, I kind of was glancing at them as we were going through the presentation. They were pretty funny, some of those options.
No credit for me. That's all Adriana. So
I tried my best, so I'm glad. Yeah, so we'll take this time to answer any questions. So we have one from Lisa. Can you repeat the website for Sticky, please? I dropped a link there, just taking you guys to Sunt's general safety
awesome.
page. And from there, you can navigate. But if there's a specific one, Reese, let me know and I will drop it in the chat for everyone.
Yeah, we'll
Awesome.
do.
And I think a comment Reese made earlier about like where to start. I think you can start wherever makes sense for your organization. I think a very simple place to start is typically the incident investigation process. Like you're probably already doing something like that. Add in a sticky component to it. So as you're reviewing an incident, was this a sticky activity somewhere there? You don't have to implement a whole sticky program at once. Implement it in one place, get people used to the term, then move to the next. So just kind of my advice there based on experience.
There you go. Wow, I guess I'm silly for not knowing this, how cool this is, but the website is actually stopthesticky.com.
I love it.
There you go. Pretty easy.
Reese, I see a question come in. The application that you mentioned, is it homegrown or publicly available? So like I think that's your sticky observation app.
Yeah, we at Sun use this job management system that competes with several other platforms out there available that you've probably heard of. And it manages our projects on a overall basis with a safety component kind of involved. It is publicly available, but it's a platform you would use for an entire like construction company and managing projects, finance, schedule, well, not maybe schedule, but finance and contracts and all sorts of other quality, all sorts of other things. But there's plenty of cool options out there to look for. I definitely refer my friends to HammerTech though.
Love it.
If they're general contractors. But there are other platforms out there that might suit others better. But I really like HammerTech for general contractors, just the way it's all integrated. It's not Procore, but it's a competitor. I'll just say it. It's called N8. It was built by Kiewit, and they sold it off as a platform, and it's a standalone now. But it's a really a big investment.
Sure.
So there's one more question here that came up in the chat, and it was, do you have statistics related to when Sticky was not part of your company versus when it became part of your company and the reflection it has on reduced incidents? Great question.
Yep, we sure do. Yep, we had dashboards before we had implemented Sticky, and we actually went back and combed our data for the last 7 years, I think it is. And yes, we have seen a reflection on our program on our reduction of incidents. In fact, we just got a letter from our insurance broker this year about how our overall claims and injuries are down. So it is working. It's having an impact even on non-sticky types of incidents. It's just reducing incidents in general. But fortunately, the biggest reduction is it's when we look at an incident, we classify it as sticky or not sticky. And when we do have a sticky incident where someone could have been hurt or killed, it's either sticky success, meaning we had all of our controls in place, or it's luck. And what we've seen is a huge reduction in our sticky luck incidents where controls were lacking. And that's what's most important. And I figured I would share there.
Awesome. My experience is not nearly as in-depth as Reese's, but kind of to the same token, customers I've helped implement this, or when I was consulting, implementing these programs, reduction in overall incidents for sure, but the majority of the main point was a reduction in the serious incidents based on these programs. And the main ways we did this were getting operations more involved with safety, and doing that by getting them involved in a sticky observation, sticky inspection process. So there's definitely a lot of stats and numbers out there to back that up, from numerous customers, numerous different general contractors in the construction industry. Awesome. Any other questions from the group?
One just came in here, Dylan. Have you had it running long enough to see any positive results in lowering your EMR? And do you also track injuries, incidents by energy source, / the energy wheel approach?
Yep, sure do, sure have. Our EMR is really cool, by the way. I'm very proud of it. I think right now it's like a 0.51, maybe somewhere in there.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's looking good, but yeah, it has dropped since we have implemented our sticky program. Because when I started with Sunt like 6 years ago, I think we're up in the 0.6s somewhere, and sticky's been around now in place, I would say, around the last 3. And since then, we've definitely been in the lower 5s. When it comes to tracking incidents by energy source, yes, our dashboards are pretty cool and sophisticated, and we're able to get in there and finagle the data and see how many incidents for shit that's built at heights that we have, or shit that's built underground. We can see which one of those fatal 8 has most frequency, and that way we know we should be targeting training efforts or planning efforts, for maybe fall protection or excavation work, whatever.
Awesome. And I think just to kind of tie these things together, for those that don't know what the energy wheel is, it's, something else put out by the Construction Research Safety Alliance that kind of focuses on like what type of energy was involved in this activity. So it's not directly correlated to sticky, but it definitely can be, and they can be used in conjunction with each other. You can Google energy wheel. It's publicly available, but again, it's similar but different than sticky. So you can, the best safety programs have found a way to marry these things together and kind of use them in conjunction.
Way to shout out CSRA there too.
Yeah.
If Adrian, if you would be willing to share their link in the chat there, I think I was able to share it to you for CSRA, but that's for any safety professional in the construction industry. You really should know about them. You need to go to their website, be aware of their knowledge center and the information that they've published. So many great research projects that are impacting our industry, and this group is headed up by the top scientists in the world. Pretty cool stuff.
Yep, and they do a ton of real world studies, and like Reese mentioned, there's data and research and science that backs up all the information they're publishing. So it's a really great resource. CSRA, Construction Research Safety Alliance.
Construction Safety Research Alliance.
Thanks, Reese.
I'm pulling it up right now.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Adrian. Better just put it in the chat to be safe.
Damn acronyms and safety people.
Yeah.
That's all it is. All right. Are there any more questions? I'm just putting in
there you go. Thanks,
this
Chris.
Resource for everyone.
Chris Osterhout dropped it in.
Oh, amazing. Awesome. Beat me to it.
And then another question just came in. What is Sunt's Fatal 8?
So like I mentioned, when we developed Sticky and in that room with our corporate safety team, which Sunt has multiple groups that build different kinds of projects. We've got transportation, industrial, building, which is where I'm at, and we have a concrete group that self-performs. And all of us were in a room, all of us that manage those groups were in a room, and we're talking about what are the major exposures at Sunt in our work that could kill us. And so we sat down and we came up with a list of what we thought was most relevant. Happens to be 8 of them. We call them our fatal 8. So I've mentioned a couple today, like shit that's built at heights or built underground or built in confined spaces. There's 8 of them, and that's on our energy wheel. We call it our sticky wheel. That's our fatal 8. But I know a lot of contractors out there have their own version. I've heard of the Magnificent Seven at one contractor that I used to work for. But I know a lot of big GCs out there definitely have their own version of these energy wheels or their Fatal 8.
Yep. And you can use historical data to put those together, whether it's historical data from the industry or historical data at your own company. So, if you've been collecting incident information for, the last couple of years, you can probably look at that information and figure out what are our Fatal 8 or what are our Fatal 4, as OSHA puts it, or, identify what causes the most injuries at our organization. So don't forget to look internally to figure that out as well. Awesome. We'll hang around for a couple more minutes if anybody else has any questions.
There's no more questions. We can just end it a little early. And if you have any questions, Reese and Dylan are both on LinkedIn. You can shoot them any questions you have on the topic. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any that you may have. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for joining. I'd like to thank you so much, Reese, for joining us today, and Dylan as well for being a co-host. And again, if you guys have any questions, you can reach out to either Reese or Dylan. I am on LinkedIn as well, and I'd be happy to make any connections where it's needed. So keep an eye out for an email from me to get your pack of energy wheels based on the topic that we've discussed today. And I hope you'll have a great rest of your Thursday.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Adriana. Thanks, Reese.
Stay safe, everybody.
Everybody.